with Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com and Tider Insider TV. Rodney, college football for Alabama is back this Friday. Spring practice begins. Granted, it's just one practice prior to spring break, and then they'll come back a week from Monday and get on through the spring. But still, excitement here this week with the Tide out on the practice field on Friday, and I think we're all anticipating this spring because it does feel a little bit like a transition in terms of what happened last year to a new season, some changeovers again in the staff, and I sense a lot of excitement around spring practice 2020. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of storylines, obviously. This year you talked about the transition. I think, obviously, you've got not only a new coach or two, but and the new strength conditioning coaches certainly have brought a lot of excitement. But, Gary, I think, too, the quarterback situation, Tua's gone now. Obviously, Mac Jones got a lot of great experience, but I think that's going to be one thing to really keep an eye on. A lot of people are very excited to see Bryce Young, the five-star, coming in. It's already here. Look forward to seeing him participate this spring, but also you have, Talia Tagovailoa and also Paul Tyson in the mix as well. So that's going to be an interesting storyline. I think the offensive line, we've talked about all these things, the offensive line, there's the right tackle position's really the spot that I think everyone's going to keep an eye on. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very interesting storylines as you head into spring practice.
Yeah, and one of them, of course, obviously is the changeover in the strength and conditioning program, which, you don't get to actively see how, as media members, how that's being implemented. But over the weekend, Dr. Matt Ray put out an interesting tweet that he's been real impressed with Jeff Allen and his staff, and with the addition of the new Sports Science Center, bringing in some new performance technology in the weight room. He said on Twitter, this is going to get real fun real fast. So obviously David Ballou, and they're bringing over a couple of other strength and conditioning assistants from IU to join this new Alabama staff. They're pumped and excited about getting going.
Well, and I think that excitement and that energy is going to be something that will be a shot in the arm. I really do. I think that you've got two guys coming in that are really eager to be here, glad to be here, and they've got a lot to work with. I mean, there's no question they're going to have everything they need right at their fingertips, and they've got the players to work with, Gary, the players to develop. It's going to be interesting. I know a lot of people are excited about that, but, and as you know, strength conditioning, speed development, all of those things take time to kind of see the results. But I know that everyone's close to the programs, very, very excited about, David Ballou and Dr. Matt Ray being here and, what they'll be able to accomplish with, developing these players.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're looking forward to it. I want to ask you about recruiting, and we'll get to the junior day here in a moment over the weekend. But I've been a lot of discussion about it at TiderInsider.com, and you've been doing this a long time, and it clearly, what lies ahead is what's important in recruiting. But still, this is unusual that we're in March. And for 2020, and the signing period's in December, in Alabama with the decommitment of Drake May, the quarterback out of Charlotte who committed and flipped to North Carolina, Alabama has one commitment for this 2021 recruiting class. Now, again, I don't think there's reason to be overly concerned, but it is unusual. Usually by now, Alabama has at least a handful, if not two handfuls worth of commitment, and is already rated, in the top 2 or 3 or 4 in the nation. You look at it now, Alabama's nowhere to be found in the recruiting rankings with just one commitment. Your take on that?
Well, I think sometimes you look at those two things, too. You go back and look at it last year. Some of the guys that they had committed early didn't end up in the class. There's a lot of transition, changeover, guys flipped to other schools, whatever it is. But I think you look at last year this time, roughly a year ago, Auburn's top 2 commitments were Condarius Robinson and DeMoy Kennedy. They ended up at Alabama. Oklahoma's top 2 commitments were Drew Sanders and Jace McClellan. They ended up at Alabama. USC's number 1 commitment was Bryce Young. He ended up at Alabama. I think over time, over the next couple of months, Alabama will continue to bring guys in on unofficial visits. That's what they really like to do, have an opportunity to continue to evaluate them. The summer camps, very important. But getting guys here on campus, you start to see things start kind of begin to change in terms of the recruiting. There's a lot of really good in-state players that they're focusing on that really I think are must-get type guys. You have to control your state, like JaQuincy McKinstry, Pinson Valley, Dylan Brooks at Roanoke Hanley, McKinstry, of course, cornerback, and Brooks, an outside linebacker type. They've already got Deontay Lawson. That's their one commitment right now. But you got two kids up there on the defensive side at Birmingham Ramsey, Jeremiah Williams, an outside linebacker / defensive end type. Tim Keenan's I think he's going to be an outstanding defensive lineman, Gary. He's a guy that when you get him in here in a strength and conditioning program like Alabama's going to have, he could flourish. And then they offered a guy this weekend. You talked about the junior day. Anquin Barnes from Robert E. Lee down in Montgomery, a 6'5", 300-pound defensive lineman. Now, let's say this, too. We're looking at the ratings right now, and people are, kind of saying, well, think about how much the rankings changed over the course of a year. When we got down near the end of the year. You're talking about a guy, Will Anderson, that Alabama got a commitment from last June, outside linebacker from the state of Georgia. He was probably a 150 to 200 type guy, somewhere in between there, okay? He ends up the number 5 player in the country. DeMoy Kennedy's stock really rose. Drew Sanders' stock shot through the roof. So a lot of the things will change over the course of this recruiting year. And I think the main thing is to kind of watch and see as Alabama brings in guys this month, over the next few months, the spring, and then the early summer. That's the real key, is getting the guys on campus, because once they do a fantastic job of really getting these guys' attention. And then I think, too, with this strength and conditioning program, now with these hires, and again, taking nothing away from Scott Cochran, but this is kind of taking it to another level. I mean, you've got that sports science center that's just about completed. You've got these two guys. I think they're going to certainly help with the recruiting.
Rodney Orr with us from TiderInsider.com and Tider Insider TV. Junior Day over the weekend, and there were some highly rated prospects in for that. Anything you've heard in regards to how that went, Rod?
Not really much, to be honest with you. It wasn't as big as, the one they had previously a few weeks ago. That was the bigger one. They did have some guys in. Now, Mario Williams is a receiver down in Plant City, Florida, who, again, I hate to say that, but how people toss out comparisons to Jalen Waddle, what have you. I'm not sure he's that, but he gives you an idea of what kind of player he is, and he's the best small receiver in the country. Really dynamic player. I mean, Oklahoma, Georgia, you name it, Clemson, everybody on this guy. He didn't make the visit. He's going to come up at a later date, but I would keep an eye on him. He's a guy, I know that's a top priority in terms of wide receivers, that Alabama's looking at and the needs in this class. So I think that's important. And I know Caleb Johnson was supposed to come up, a big offensive tackle, 6'6", about 300 from Ocala, Florida. He's a guy that I would, that's another priority. I mean, a guy like that would be a huge pickup for Alabama, in my opinion. A guy like Tommy Brockemeyer, who didn't come this time, has already been here, but out of the state of Texas, maybe the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. He's a guy to really keep an eye on. So, again, I think as this process kind of unfolds, you'll start to see more and more top guys linked to Alabama.
Indeed. Quick basketball thought, Rod. I know that the Moor's been pretty active this weekend, too. I checked it out yesterday, and I understand this frustration, man. This team, much like all of the Alabama teams, it seems, the past number of years, just did not finish the regular season well. And on Saturday, probably the poorest game of the year, held to 50 points by Missouri. Their previous low in a game had been 67. So you kind of go into the SEC tournament with a whimper. But, it is a time to reset, and you get Tennessee in that 8-9 game on Thursday with a chance to win and play Kentucky. But the mood seems to be pretty negative right now, but I just want to get your thoughts on when Nick Saban came here in 2007, and they teased us getting off to that 6-2 start, blew out Tennessee on the day the textbook scandal broke, but after that didn't win another regular season game, had to beat Colorado in the Independence Bowl just to have a winning record. I see some parallels a little bit between Saban's first year, which was 13 years ago, and that's a long time ago, and Nate Oates. This team teased us this year. 21-point lead in the first half at Florida, scored over 100 points several times, blew out Auburn at home, but also had some games where they looked, including Saturday, just looked awful. Is that something that you agree with, that when you come in with a lot of hoopla and a lot of excitement, but you're inheriting a team that made a coaching change for a reason, that sometimes it just doesn't always go the way you want it to go? And I thought in 2007 with Nick Saban, they flashed some potential, but in the end, that was an average football team. But then next year, the page was turned, and then one of the greatest dynasties in college football was built. I'm not suggesting Nate Oates will do that, but I am suggesting that it takes a little time to get your program implemented the way you want to get it implemented, and there's some growing pains, right?
First year usually is a transition year, a very difficult year. Because first of all, you're not really familiar with each other when you're talking about a coaching staff, players, what the expectations are. You just don't have enough time in a lot of these. Now, sometimes you see those first years. Terry Bowden came in and went 11-0. I remember
he did.
Bruce came in and succeeded Woody Hayes, and he went 11-0 and then got beat in the Rose Bowl. But you have those seasons where a new guy comes in and things happen. But again, I just think Nate Oates has got his own system. It's drastically different. I think you saw a lot of guys that flourished in parts of this season. John Petty was a guy that was much better. And I think so. I think they did a fantastic job. And again, I think too, Nate Oates and this coaching staff, going through the SEC, that's a learning experience for them. I mean, what it is to go on the road here, it's different, as you know. So I think when you look at Nate Oates, he's committed to what he's doing, a guy that knows what he's doing. He has a plan. He has a system. He knows the kind of guys he wants to recruit and bring in to fit that system. So I do think it takes a little bit of time. Now, again, I'm not making excuses for anything that happened at the end of the year, but it's not necessarily something that's unusual when you're talking about a first-year coach.
Well, that's what's interesting about TiderInsider.com. Over the years, it's evolved, and if you go out there right now on the closed forum, you'll see discussion about basketball. Obviously, a lot of excitement for spring football, baseball's fast start, softball. It's not just a football board anymore, is it, Rodney? There's a lot of different topics discussed at TiderInsider.com.
No, it's not. It's not, and people are really talking about this, like you said, basketball. That's really been the top subject right now. TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There's an address there to send a check, and it gives you all the premium stuff. And look forward to spring practice, Gary, starting on Friday. And, we'll have all that information for you, pictures, and even probably some video from WVUA.
Yep, and we'll preview spring practice tomorrow night on Tider Insider TV at 6:30 on WVUA 23. Thank you, Rodney.
Okay, look forward to it. Take care.
10:32.